Yeah, I just wanted to take some time. Welcome back, Pastor Eric, to the podcast episode here we're going to do. And I just wanted to check in with you and see how things were going on your end, and just try to chat with you as we do about current events and things going on in the world. And I wanted to see how are you? Are you faring pretty well out there?
Yep, doing fine. I got a little poison in my eye, so I'm about 3 days into it, so it's getting better, and so I feel much better today. But out there pulling weeds and didn't know the difference between poison and any other thing, so so I got a little reminder. But other than that, everything's doing fine.
That's good. Yeah, sometimes that happens to me when I'm weed whacking or mowing, and it just kicks up a bunch of dust. Different kinds of plant juices are flying, and you can get it all over you.
There you go. Yeah.
So recently, I've just been doing some different kind of like episodes and different discussions about this idea that Chris Pinto brings up in his program sometimes, and it's this idea of irredentism and the demographic shift of nations is something that we can see as an instrument of political warfare that has been going on. It goes back, has quite a long history of this being used as a principle of warfare and conquest. And we can see that this has been heavily underway here for quite some time in the United States, with no seeming answer to the problem of this kind of Reconquista and La Raza movement coming from South America. And also we have a massive influx in the last decade or so, of Islam all over, and building mosques all over America. And of course, there's lip service being paid to these issues, but it's clear that what the agenda for conquering America looks like. It's something you've been talking about for some time, but it's kind of astonishing to see it come into full effect and to be, enacted right in front of us.
That's very true. I was texting dear brother Scott a couple of hours ago, and I said, until the Lord's people return to the Reformation Bible, which is our AV 1611 King James in its present edition of 1769 for English-speaking people, and begin to expose Romanism in all of its facets, there will never be a change here. What we learned from the Reformation is the reason why Martin Luther was so effective is that he backdropped Romanism behind the beautiful light of the gospel. And that's not being done. Calvin did the same thing. So if you're just going to preach the straight gospel, which I've seen Baptist churches preach for many years, but without mentioning the papacy and its power, politically, academically, you name it, until you make the connection to the papal control of whatever you're dealing with, like the Islamic invasion or the Hispanic invasion or the black invasion out of Africa, until you trace it to Rome, nothing's going to change, and there will be no serious resistance. Because with the Reformation, you had then all these revolting nations of the white Protestant peoples fighting the armies of the Pope, and ultimately giving us Western civilization in 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia. And so until they all knew they were fighting the papacy. But that's the problem right here. Brother Chris does some very good things, but I really think he should say, listen, the whole Islamic invasion is orchestrated by Rome, and until we deal with Rome and Rome's control of Islam, we're never going to get anywhere. And that's the same way with communism. Until you get the realization that the communism is perfected by the Jesuits and the reductionists, and they used the Masonic Jew Karl Marx to write the Communist Manifesto, even if he maybe not even wrote it. Until that connection is made to Rome and the Jesuit order with all these agitations, invasions, wars, we're getting nowhere. And so that's my prayer, that these preachers wake up and start to, every time you take the pulpit, you better denounce Romanism in some form or fashion, whether it's doctrine or its policies or its political power, but it has to be brought up continually.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I was doing research recently on this relationship and the hints, the historical hints that are left, that are this connection between Karl Marx and Father Bex, who ultimately became the Jesuit general. He was a a Jesuit scholar in London who was accused of basically tutoring Karl Marx. And this is something that the Kaiser, it was going to be not Wilhelm, right? But it was going to be
Bismarck.
Bismarck, yeah.
Openly accused Bex of tutoring Marx, and Marx never denied it.
And the connection there, if you look at historically, there are some writings that Bismarck put out in his German Gazette that he discussed and talked about this whole issue a lot further. But when I researched it, it's all on microfilm and it's all in German. So I have a lot of work to do to find out more about these discussions. And they're hard to, they're not very accessible. I can find them, I can locate them, but I can't read them yet. So I'd like to break those down in time and just see what more Bismarck was saying about this relationship. And you can see this discussion happening on Marxist websites, so they're well aware of it, that Marxism or communism was being developed as a kind of international force, an international system of corruption that would break down and dissolve nationalism and cause nations to react and have to fight for their survival and create this Hegelian conflict, this controlled conflict.
And how was nationalism born? I mean, in the Dark Ages, you had the Pope's Holy Roman Empire. You didn't have nationalism there. So how was it born? It was born out of the Protestant Reformation and 150 years wars in Europe to end with the Treaty of Westphalia, the Treaty of Munster in 1648. And that births the modern era and the beginning of nation states being truly nationalistic. And Bismarck warned that our nation would be taken from us. He warned of a second 30 Years' War that would be coming through the great author Theodore Geisinger, who wrote The Jesuits in 1872. And Bismarck said, no pope can be saved. He said, I believe a Catholic priest can be saved. He said, I don't believe any pope can be saved, because Bismarck was a Bible reader. He read the Luther Bible, and he was a saved man. Bismarck kept Germany out of war with Russia. And, of course, that'll all change with World War I, when the Jesuits get control of Wilhelm II. So Bismarck is probably, next to Luther, I maintain, the greatest German who ever lived. And I've said oftentimes that German people need to have a picture of Bismarck in their home, every last one of them.
No, I agree with you. I think that the Second Reich, as you talk about, was ultimately a Protestant German nationalistic endeavor. And it was after, of course, the Holy Roman Empire, which was broken up by Napoleon. But the restructuring of Germany under the Lutheran and Protestant ethic bore a golden age of civility and social tranquility and incredible wealth building that was a blessing to Germany. And
they also enfranchised the Jews in 1870 or so, 1871. They gave the Jews the vote, 550,000 of them. And so when they did that, they brought the Abrahamic blessing upon their nation, and it became the greatest nation in Europe, particularly Prussia, Protestant Prussia.
Yep, absolutely. We're also doing a little piece on Dave Hunt's book, A Woman Rides the Beast. We're just reading through the chapters, and it's pretty productive. And he is right now in I think we're in chapter 11. He's talking about, and he's contrasting the papacy as it changes through time and changes its kind of stripes and its motif. At once, if you go back and look, there's many quotes that talk about the absolute, unlimited imperial power of the papacy to dominate the world, and kings and nations who should all submit. And then later, he contrasts those statements with John Paul II, who tries to refashion the papal attitude and characteristic to be in line with loving peace and loving personal freedom and loving national constitutional independence. And so it's quite a shift that they have made and trying to transform the popular opinion of the papacy into this new kind of quasi-liberated papal attitude they have.
Well, it was John Paul II that apologized for the Crusades and apologized for the Inquisition and apologized for the Third Reich, in the attempt to placate the Jews. So But the doctrine never changes. Once they have to change their doctrine, they have to denounce the doctrine of the temporal power. Once they would do that, then Roman Catholics should be able to be citizens and vote. But as long as you have the evil, wicked, sinister doctrine of the temporal power, that the Pope has the right to rule all nations from Rome, you cannot ever allow them to vote or be part of your political process. And several nations in Europe did the very same thing, forbid them to vote for certain times. But yeah, so it's all to deceive and take you by design and trickery, to make you to believe that that harlot is some sort of a virtuous woman, some little pussycat that can never harm you, when your bangs are dripping with blood of 1,500 years of murder, persecution, and war. And that's the real papacy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that no really saved man who knows the gospel and studies the Bible and who belongs to Jesus Christ could ever let himself be voted to be the Pope. I think that any man who allows that to happen is certainly a wicked and unsaved man. I think that's clear. And they by the point that they've been
or a woman, brother, because remember you had Pope Joan in the 800s. Who was in a parade. She was pregnant and she went into labor and parade and died. And there was a statue of her for many, many years in Rome of the Pope Joan. They finally took it away.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that in many ways that the establishment of this, it's fascinating because if you look at through time, all the time is when Israel was, and Jerusalem specifically, was attacked and brought under conquest. There are two instances in current history and a third instance in the future when the Antichrist in his power and his military government is going to ultimately come against Jerusalem to destroy it at the end of this era of history. And you can see the first instance was, of course, Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar. The second instance was, as we talked about before, Rome with General Titus and under his father Vespasian. And then this third instance to come. And all three instances are going to be under this rubric and under this titular heading of Pontifex Maximus, right? So it was the Babylonian priest kings early on who were the original originator of this title, Pontifex Maximus, and then Vespasian had the title, and of course the Pontifex Maximus, the papal Antichrist, will be the final iteration of that wicked seat of an occult throne at the end of history here.
I have a dear brother Ed Canfield. He lives in Maryland, and he was digging out wonderful Jesuit books for me a while back, and he found a chart. It's about 3 feet long, and it's a tree. And with that tree are all these different branches, and every branch is a pope. Going back, I think, to probably Peter. They're saying Peter was the first pope, which we know is ridiculous. But all these branches are the different popes. And it's going to the top. And this is like in 1890s. I think the last one was the 13th. But the top of it is an equilateral triangle beaming with light with letters written in the center of it. Very cryptic letters. And Ed dug out the meaning of those letters, and it's IHS. So the Jesuits are in control of all the popes to the end that the final Pope of Rome will be the capstone. He'll be the head of the Satan's mystery of iniquity. He'll be slain with a sword, risen from the dead, and be the Antichrist or the beast of Revelation 13. So that's why Rome cannot be destroyed. That's why there will always be a papacy. It's the font of evil and the font of the devil's mystery of iniquity. And so every pope is not the vicar of Christ. Every pope is the vicar of the Antichrist. That's the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right. The character and the identity of the Antichrist is bound up in the word Christ, because in so many ways they try to be an Alter Christus, they try to be an alternate Christ, they try to wear Christ around, keep him crucified and nailed up on the cross, on the papal crozier, or up on the wall within the various cathedrals. They like to see a suffering, contorted, bloody Jesus. That's kind of like their triumph. And so I believe at the heart of this is the mystery schools, the ancient Babylonian pagan traditions. I think at the deepest level, they infiltrated the hierarchy of Rome. They did it consciously and knowingly. They fed to the outer masses, the outer doctrine of pseudo-Christianity, and they maintained their inner practices and their inner ritualism and made it, in syncretism, they made it identical with the cult of Isis and the cult of the various pagan Roman cults that were so active and so powerfully ensconced there in Rome for so many centuries. So when this new upstart of religion of Christianity came into place, they set about to undermine it, to usurp it, to overtake it, and that's exactly what happened in Rome. And you can see that it changed its character and its initiative right away. Within a few centuries, it was trying to dominate other churches. It was trying to change the times and the seasons and the ways that the Christian church practiced its observation of the Passover during the time when Christ was crucified. All these things began to shift and change to be more accommodating and adopted to Roman practice, including Sunday, including the way that they shifted Easter to be the first full moon after the summer equinox to kind of align with goddess worship, right? So there's all these features, including the worship of Mary. She's going to take over the place of this kind of Babylonian and Roman obsession with goddess worship and making her into an idol and into a goddess herself, slowly changing her character over time, over many centuries. And they're going to shift her. They even are going to add various contemptible Gnostic gospels to try to change her so that she has her own birth, her own, what would you say, what's the word? She was immaculately conceived, right? So she was a virgin born as well. So she's almost a Messiah in her own right, deserving of prayer and veneration. And so in so many ways, this iniquitous inner cult of pagan mystery religion within the Vatican has continued, demonically inspired, because no system could remain for so many centuries, 16, 17, 18 centuries without changing. It's totally demonic.
Totally demonic. It's the devil's mystery of iniquity that he uses the specific idolatrous Babylonian religion that he started after the flood. Mm-hmm. And so it's from Babylon, then you have Semiramis, Tammuz, Nimrod, and it goes into various other empires, and it gets into Egypt. You have Isis, Horus, Osiris, and then in Rome they're going to have the Virgin Mary and Joseph and Jesus. All of that is nothing but Babylonianism. And the whole idea of having the Immaculate Conception or whatever is to make Mary a co-redemptrix, replacing the Holy Spirit. And so the Trinity, the Trinity of Babylon, of Romanism, is the Father, the Son, and Mary. Right. Going back to Babylon. So it's mystery Babylon religion of Revelation 17. Absolutely. Which is Romanism, and it sits in the city that has 7 hills, Revelation 17:18, which can only be Rome.
Yeah, it's perfectly pictured within Daniel with the image that stands with the head of gold and the arms and the Greeks and the Persians down to Rome being the legs and the thighs with a long period of imperial domination that would transition to a religious papal domination and end in today with the 10 toes that are rising, the 10 kingdoms that are arising as they begin to build this regionalism, this international, transnational global government that's going to be situated with 10 kings or 10 regional governments, including the European Union, the North American Union. That's what's so interesting politically today, is that the left and the right and the political substrate in America is so confused and they're so spun out that they can't seem to detect the fact that the single course, the single agenda is maintained throughout the entire time, despite whether there's a Democrat or Republican or Trump. He has been furthering this North American Union agenda more than anyone else, and he can see that there's segments of Canada that are beginning to rebel and almost request to be have a political affiliation with the United States. They're looking at Greenland, they're looking at Venezuela and Mexico, and you can see that it won't be very long before it could be a war, it could be the various, adventurism and military adventurism that will take place that will basically allow this whole thing to settle into place. And of course, it will require the destruction of the Constitution. I can see that's part of the goal here. And this regional global government there will be no more American Constitution to speak of, but it'll become something else entirely.
That's right. They got to get rid of that heretic Protestant document called the Constitution of the United States of America. That's got to go along with this Baptist Calvinist Bill of Rights, specifically the First Amendment. So they absolutely have every design against that, and they want to create this whole empire in North America, which, as you said, would include Venezuela, Greenland, and so on. But they're doing the same thing in Africa with the Pan-African movement. They're going to have a king there, a king over here, a king in South America, a king in Europe. And the whole purpose of Islam is to facilitate this. And when they're done using the Muslims here, they will round them up and they will send them to the camps, because it's going to be the cry. We have to say Western civilization is going to be converted to Islam. And so that will be believed without ever thinking that the Pope controls Islam and brought them over here in the first place, just using them with all their crime and sin and wickedness against us to ultimately justify their roundup and mass execution. So they're just being used as pawns by the papacy to that end. So that's right. We're going to have 10 kings. The 10 kings will be subject to the beast of the Antichrist in the 70th, last half of the 70th week of Daniel. And we see that in the making right now.
I noticed just recently, just as I was listening to the news, that there was a political confederation that was taking place, and I'm just trying to check on it right now. And it's basically the Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan alliance. And it just occurred to me when I heard this news that this is something that you had been kind of foreseeing for some time, that there would be this establishment of this new caliphate, and the destruction of the Shia Islam would begin to dwindle and be brought down and gotten rid of off the pages of history here, and we would settle with this new Sunni Islamic caliphate, this new section. Maybe it's one of the 10 kings, as we can understand it, a Sunni Islamic king. Okay.
But one of the 10 kings will probably be in that region for sure. But Islam will cease to exist when the final Pope of Rome is slain with a sword and rises from the dead. And he's, who can make war with the beast? Revelation 13:4. So he's the Mahdi. Looked for in Islam. So all the religions will cease to exist. No more Romanism, no more Islam, no more Judaism, no more Hinduism, none of it. It's all going to end when the final Pope rises from the dead to be the beast.
Because it'll become one global religion at that point. It'll be a merger.
Yes, one global religion of worshiping the beast. And if you're not worshiping the beast, you can't buy or sell, and then you can be put to death with the guillotine. Going to cut off the heads of anybody that doesn't go along with it. So that's the end game of this for the last 3.5 years of the 70th week of years of Daniel, which is the Great Tribulation, the last 3.5 years, when the beast rules the world absolutely for 42 months, and he has no rival whatsoever. So that's all coming into play here. But that's right, there's coming, even Glenn Beck talked about a second Sunni Caliphate. And that makes perfect sense, because you see the head of Islam in 1924, the Sultan in Turkey, during when the British were taking Jerusalem, he ordered his troops to withdraw. There wasn't a shot fired when Allenby took Jerusalem, and they dropped leaflets telling all the Muslims to leave and flee out of Jerusalem. And not a shot was fired, because they were ordered to by the Sultan in Turkey, because he deliberately gave up Jerusalem, because the Pope had ordered him to do so for the creation of the revived Latin kingdom of Jerusalem, which we would know to be as Israel today. So he was all involved, and I maintain that a deal was made that you go along with this, and we will have a second Sunni Caliphate for you, because the first one ended in 1924. But it was to be revived. So that's why the Jesuits, with their Knights of Malta, built Saudi Arabia. It was Arabia, but with a Saud dynasty in 1932. They make it Saudi Arabia. They will have it fabulously wealthy. It has a huge gold storage there. And this wealth of the Wahhabis is in Arabia, Saudi Arabia. But they will also absorb all the other Sunni nations, Pakistan, Jordan, Turkey. All the Sunni nations will be united in a Sunni second caliphate, and its money will be the dinar. That's why they have to revalue the dinar in anticipation of the second Sunni caliphate.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how everything within prophecy, within the revelation of John, and all the Old Testament prophets, and even the sayings and the teachings of Jesus Christ and Christianity, everything points to this final moment and this final conflict there in Jerusalem, as it becomes, as the Bible calls it, a cup of trembling for all nations.
Yes.
And you can see that Islam is intensely focused, at least Sunni Islam. Shia Islam doesn't have any interest in Israel or in the mosques there in Jerusalem, but Shia.
They're forbidden. They're forbidden to go there.
Yeah. Sunni Islam is forbidden. Yeah, Sunni Islam expects Israel or Jerusalem to be its third most holy place. Judaism, those who are basically apostate Jews who still expect to have a temple religion there, a temple establishment of the blood sacrifice of animals for the remission of sins. So there's this kind of confusion among many Christians today as they kind of celebrate this idea of the red heifers, and they celebrate this idea of the reestablishment of a temple sacrifice in Jerusalem. And of course, Freemasonry is dedicated at the core of its tenets on this center focus of Jerusalem. And same thing with Catholicism as well.
Jerusalem, the Knights Templars, yes. It was the whole purpose of the Knights Templars.
Exactly.
The building of the third temple,
So there's this intense focus for controlling the Holy Land there, for establishing a military stronghold and a political system of control there. And this is all kind of anticipating the arrival in Scripture of Jesus Christ, as he prophesied to return there the very moment that he comes back in the flesh. He's going to return there in a state of war against the world and against all those. So this is building towards this apocalyptic picture that we
That's right. That's when he comes and he defeats the armies of the beast of the Antichrist in Revelation 19. And the Antichrist will really be undefeatable, speaking among men, and it will take the true God-man, the Lord Jesus Christ, to defeat him, because no one else can.
Yeah, all the world's power structures are centered there. Islam, the Templarism of the Roman Catholics, Freemasonry, Judaism. It'll be a unified global system of religion that everyone has to participate in, and there will be a few people driven out, including Protestants. As far as I can tell, Bible-believing Protestants don't have a reason to fixate on Jerusalem, or to have some kind of stronghold there, or to have some kind of religious oracle there for their practice, right? That's just not part of what Christians believe. It's a nice place to visit, but it's not center of Protestant religion.
That's correct. It's not center of biblical, Bible-based Protestant or Baptist beliefs. That's right. We have nothing in our doctrines that talk about the sanctity of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And the chief Gentile trodden them down has been Pope for the last 500 years. And remember that Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, was deeded to the Pope by Yossi Bellin in September of 1993, according to the Italian newspaper La Stampa. So the papacy has controlled the Temple Mount since 1993 for the purpose of having their third temple. And that's when it becomes very significant with that servant of the devil, Pete Hegseth, talks about the building of the third temple when he went and visited Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So he's obviously working for the papacy for them.
Yeah, it's a total abrogation of Christianity to suggest that building a third Hebrew temple there would have any religious value whatsoever, because the Messiah has already come. The temple practice there can do nothing for us in our relationship or our need for redemption or forgiveness of sins or salvation. Yep. So the whole idea that somehow we would have a Jewish temple there. Yeah.
Christ entered Jerusalem into the temple there in the heavenly Jerusalem, splashed his blood on the mercy seat before the Father, and made a propitiation not only for our sins, but for the sins of the whole world. And then he sits down as the heavenly high priest after the order of Melchizedek, next to the Father, expecting his enemies to be made his footstool. So everything's been done in the temple of heaven. But there's going to be a third temple here that will be the beast, the Antichrist, because Satan wants to be Christ. He wants to do everything that Christ has done. So he'll have his beast man that he'll possess. He'll have his temple on earth. He'll have his worldwide universal worship. And that's why the devil sought to get Christ to worship him twice. And when he tempted him in Matthew 4 and Luke 4. So everything's about universal worship of Satan through his chosen Antichrist.
This brings up a good point, something you've talked about quite a bit, and it's this contrast between the mystery of iniquity and the mystery of godliness. And so there's two tracks happening here, where on one level, the occult powers, if you will, have set up Jerusalem and set up a homeland for the Jews in order to drive them back to their homelands during a coming global persecution of the Jews, and in order to set up this throne and this temple for the Antichrist to sit in and take this prophesied authority. And also at the same time, God, in the mystery of godliness, is setting up his plan to revive and to restore Jerusalem. And so there's these two things happening at the same time. And so it's a contest that of people in a rush to control Jerusalem in order to gain this political dominance. And so it's a contest between the Antichrist and Jesus Christ, in either the destruction of the Jews or the restoration of them. So can we talk about that a little?
That's right. Either or. And as you're talking, I had different ideas, but remember that when the final Pope of Rome, he's the seventh Roman Caesar of Revelation 17, when he signs that covenant with many nations of Daniel 9:27 for 7 years, that begins the 70th week of years of the prophet Daniel. And on that very day, Moses and Elijah, the two prophets, will be in the streets of Jerusalem preaching repentance to the nation of Israel and to believe on Yeshua the Messiah for 1,260 days, and no one can kill them. And how we know it's Moses and Elijah? We knew Elijah was coming according to Malachi 4. Mm-hmm. And Moses will come back because it's Moses and Elijah that are seen with Christ in the Transfiguration. So they're coming back. But they will not be back until that covenant is signed, and that covenant will take place when the third temple will have already been built.
Right.
So that's what we're seeing right now. The war in the Middle East can result in the destruction of the Jerusalem mosques, so the third temple can be built, and the stones of the third temple have already been cut, and all they need to do is be brought to the Temple Mount and assembled.
Yeah, keep thinking about how this conflict with Iran is dragging out, and it seems to be kind of morphing into a larger conflict with Russia and the Ukraine war, as these two conflicts seem to be like merging together. And you can see that it's a terrible situation. And of course, the papal throne, the papacy has a long history of signing concordats with nations. And so you can see that this agreement, this 7-year covenant, is going to be a concordat. And it's fascinating because any of these nations who sign a concordat with the papacy, it's almost like a death knell. It's almost like a promise of future destruction coming soon. And it makes me think of the CCP, the Chinese communists, have a mystery concordat that apparently nobody can get a copy of it to check it out and see what it says. But it just shows you that the papacy is meddling in the affairs of the Chinese Communist Party and doing what they do best, which is bringing the people into a state of despotism and tyranny.
Totally destroying Red China, or controlling it. Because remember, the State Department here in 1949 was overseen by Francis Cardinal Spellman. And according to the writings of the John Birch Society, and there are several of them, the State Department put Mao in power. And if that's the case, Spellman put Mao in power. And Spellman was the American Pope at the time. There's a book called The American Pope by John Cooney that all your listeners need to read, written in 1988. And so Chinese communism is a creation of the Jesuits and has always been. So they're building that using our technology, using our abilities to then build this huge Chinese communist war machine so they can absorb all the other Asian nations in the Far East and thereby compose the kings of the East of Revelation 16. And that's why we had Nam. The purpose of Vietnam was to destroy the vibrant Vietnamese manhood, some 5 million of them, so they would be easily brought into the Chinese Communist orb. Same way in Korea, to destroy the strong Korean manhood there, so they can unite Korea, North and South, without firing a shot, and then submit them to Red China. So with all of our American war going on in the Far East, it was all to facilitate the building of communist Red China to lead the kings of the East. That's how much we were used during that time of the Pope's Cold War.
Yeah, it's been a consistent process of building this international empire for the Vatican, this new world order, this global government, and America has been used in just the strangest ways. We're being, whipsawed back and forth between Republican and Democrat and all these issues, and we're being masterfully controlled, and we're being used to establish this international system of power. And I think it's fascinating. Now, that book in 1988, John Cooney, do you remember the title of that book? I'll try to put it in my notes here.
The American Pope.
Gotcha.
The American Pope, a classic work taught to me by a dear woman named Betty Mills when she alerted me to the new right many years ago. She told me, if you haven't read that, Eric, you've got to read The American Pope. And she used to speak for the Man 234, and she used to be a part of the NRA until she found it was a traitorous organization, and she walked out on it.
Mm-hmm.
But a very virtuous, very brave lady, Betty Mills.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about how Islam and its introduction into the United States and the need that we're going to have to react as like a viral body reaction in order to get this kind of systematic national infection out of our nation. The whole issue, the whole dialectic of bringing Islam in, allowing it to cause all the trouble that it's going to cause, and then the reaction the American people are ultimately going to have to get rid of it, is ultimately an attack on the constitutional liberty of our country, because it just brings into this whole question of religious liberty and the whole terrible idea and the lack of wisdom in this notion of having religious liberty, especially when you have a system of a death cult, a murder cult, that we are calling a religion and allowing it to operate in your country freely because of these supposed constitutional freedoms. And they're just using our constitutional freedoms as a mechanism to destroy or to attempt to destroy America and the Constitution itself.
Exactly what Rome has done. Islam is just the little harlot of Rome doing exactly the same thing Rome has done for 150, 200 years. Now, I would like to say that the Jesuits have one of their master agents in place now, and his name is Nick Fuentes. Mm-hmm. Nick Fuentes is a brilliant young man. I know he's been tutored. The things he knows he didn't learn on his own. And this guy has been introduced through the Jesuit orders, Tucker Carlson, and others, so that he now is a spokesman and has a regular podcast. And he says about 80% of what he says is true. One of the things he said was, the man coming after Donald Trump, this power, man of power, will make Donald Trump look like Mitt Romney. He's absolutely right. And also this guy, Fuentes, also says that nobody should have the right to read the Bible with their own interpretation. That's strictly Roman Catholic doctrine. Nobody has the right to read the Bible by themselves without some priest telling you what it means. Fuentes is Jesuit ultramontane, and he is to be watched because he is really the spokesman, the forerunner of what's coming here in the new right. He says that Islam must be purged here in North America and Europe, or we're going to lose Western civilization. That's exactly what they want us to believe, to bring all of us into the new right. It's a masterpiece work. And unfortunately, because the vast majority of white men don't read the Bible and they don't know true history, they're going to be drawn in, Catholics, Protestants, Baptists alike, into this new rite. And one of the leaders will be this Nick Fuentes and others in the TPUSA. Now they got rid of the Protestant Charlie Kirk. So it's all working out exactly as they're planning, and there's no real resistance to it, with no real solution being called for. And the solution I call for is for those of us Bible-believing white men in particular. We have our own, to have our own nation, and we have to declare our independence on a county level. And without a declaration of independence, we're not following our Protestant forefathers with the Dutch Declaration, with the Mecklenburg Declaration, with the American Declaration, with the Texas Declaration. Those are all done by white Anglo-Saxon Protestants in separating from political tyrannies run by the Pope of Rome. And nobody's going to advocate that. They're all going to talk about cleaning up the swamp, and we need to do this and that. And that's never going to happen. Rome runs the swamp, and you're not getting rid of Rome.
Right. Yeah, I can see that there, along with this difficulty we have with Islam and these Sharia supremacists, we have the infiltration of the CCP deep into the politics. Apparently they were able to hack into computers and steal a database of 250 million voter files. We have this intensely sickening...
Wait a second.
Yeah.
CCP, the intelligence was a Chinese Secret Intelligence Service, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
They've always worked with the CIA. The Russian KGB, now FSB, works with the CIA. All the intelligence communities work together, but their news media tells us it was hacked into. It wasn't hacked into. They're working together.
Yeah, they represent...
Which is very frightening with the idea of war coming, because the intelligence communities are going to betray our armies. We cannot win with this intelligence community all tied together under the papacy.
Yeah, we can't maintain our sovereignty. We're going to end up being subsumed into this international system of slavery and debt slavery to central banks and to a central governing authority, which you can see already happened to the Europeans. It's so tragic that so many of these nations are now being, they're in the hands of the World Economic Forum. You can see Spain had recently been exposed to a massive invasion of like 60,000 people in a matter of hours of these Muslims from Morocco just poured over.
Yeah, 60,000 black Muslims. That's exactly right.
Now there's this contradiction in the news reports. They say, "Oh, they all went back and nothing to see here, nothing happened, and it's all reversed, and don't look over here." And then if you see the videos, the social media is powerful because you can see videos of people on the street, and they're showing that that is not the case. That this is all part of a massive deception campaign, and that those individuals who flooded into Spain, into Ceuta, and that they can now get all over Europe. They can get on trains. They can get all over the European Union.
Right, and then the Spanish Roman Catholics have to know that it's the Jesuit order that has done this to them. Brought these blacks and Moroccans into their country, into Italy and other historic Catholic countries. These Roman Catholics have to wake up that it's all from the papacy run by the Jesuit order. And if they could wake up to that, they could just say, okay, we're no longer Roman Catholics. We're going to believe the Bible. We're going to be saved by grace through faith. The Jesuits are out. The Masonic lodges are closed. And we're rounding up all these aliens here to send them back to their countries. And if they don't willingly go, we're going to kill them. That's the only solution. Same way here. If those 80,000 black savage Somalis in Minnesota don't willingly want to leave, you got to kill them, because they're busy right now killing white men in Minnesota. This is war. This is not politics. And so we're either going to fight a war or we're not. And that's the only way to do it. Either enable them to leave peacefully, right back to Somalia. We'll just take as much oil that we can to pay for all the effort that we've had to put into this. Or if you want to fight us, we're going to kill you. Either way, and if anybody gets in our way of getting rid of them, we're going to kill them too, because it's a matter of national survival. This is not politics.
Well, that's why they were brought in. They were brought in to bring us to this place of crisis where we were going to have this fight in the first place. It shouldn't even be necessary. Yeah,
that's right. It wouldn't be necessary if they hadn't brought them here in the first place.
They're just cannon fodder. They're just cannon fodder that are just brought in to serve that purpose.
They're just cannon fodder brought on that purpose. These blacks would wake up to the fact that, hey, they're being used. The end game for them is death. They should gladly leave and get out of here, including that savage woman, Cortez, that's in Congress. Get rid of that witch.
Yeah.
Who's comes from a very wealthy family and knows she's being used to this end.
Yeah.
And then Zagami said she's a Jesuitess.
Yeah, for sure. He would know.
Yeah, sure will.
This demagoguery of Nick Fuentes, of course, that's exactly what they want in Spain, is they want to allow these people to come in there to create all this havoc, and then the reactionary response of the Spanish society is going to be this ultramontane conservatism as a reactionary, as they flood back into the Catholic Church looking for a religious a resolution, a religious means to solve the problem that was created, and this just empowers the papacy once again. The people are becoming more liberalized. They're not in the Roman Catholic Church as much as they used to be. Spain used to be the home of the Spanish Inquisition. It was the stronghold of papal power, and there's no faster way to get the people to come back into the archdiocese than to allow them to be threatened by all these Muslims.
That's right. Now we have a historical example of this in the past. We have Islam invading into Spain, Portugal. They're ready to cross the Pyrenees there, and then you have the resistance of Charles Martel, the Hammer, and he defeats the armies of Islam in the Battle of Tours, and I think it's around 752, right about that time. And so this tends to unite white Catholic Europe, and only a few years later, some 50 years later, you have the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire, with Charlemagne becoming really the first head, the king of the Franks, with the Holy Roman Empire. So they used Islam to build the Holy Roman Empire, and it's going to do the same thing here. They're going to use the threat of Islam to build the new right and the new military American empire that they want to have.
Yeah, nothing in America right now, in American Christian churchianity, as I call it, nothing more blinds the eyes of these kind of liberal Christians and these apostate Protestants than this preterism and this post-millennialism that's being taught by individuals like Joel Wieben, who are just doing a great disservice and an intense amount of damage to the church, because it's coupled with this anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish hatred for the Jews, and this idea that God is done with the Jews, that all the promises and the covenant prophecies to the Jews are just for...
It's now for the church.
Exactly.
Yeah. The church, the satanic replacement theology.
Right. Supersessionism.
And we know that anybody that's going to read the Bible for what it says in this literal reading in Romans 11:25, the blindness of parts happened to Israel till the fullness of the Gentiles have come. And then shall all Israel be saved, as it's written in Hosea. And Luther said, would to God that day would come. Luther looked for the day of national restoration for Israel. He never wrote on the Jews and their lies. So that's exactly right. And so this heresy of preterism, which is Jesuit, absolutely, Alcazar came out of that. And then you have historicism, which is equal heresy, because you don't understand any of the book of the Revelation if you're a historicist. And that's only like 400 years old, that heresy. Only biblical futurism is what the early church believed in for the first 3 centuries. And then the devil with his Rome and Origin and others had to do away with it with their historicism and say that, well, the church has replaced Israel. And there's a great book on dispensationalism. Charles Ryrie wrote one, but there's another very, very good one that's been written that I have. And it shows the history of dispensationalism, namely the 2 things: restoration of Israel, the reading of the scripture literally, that was the doctrine of the early church, and even all throughout the dark ages of their true church.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to sit here and watch Joel Wieben go through these kind of perturbations where he's constantly trying to push this weird theological narrative, and he is constantly spending time linking up with Roman Catholic theologians and scholars, and he's always ridiculing Protestantism, and so it's this gradual Romanism, this gradual process of turning the American church into a Roman Catholic light through the practices, through the sacraments. They call it something else, but in practice, it's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. Episcopalian is Romanism. Anglican is Romanism. And the great step to all of this sin was the Westcott and Hort Greek text, the Jesuit Greek text, that was foisted upon the Anglican Church, and then ultimately foisted upon all the Protestants and even the Baptists. And once you adopt that heretical pro-Jerome Latin Vulgate Greek text, you will become a Romanist in time. And that's what all the new Bibles are based upon, that filthy, dirty, wicked Westcott and Hort, Eberhard Nessel, you name it, Greek text. That was the real key accomplishment of the Jesuits with Cardinal, what was it, on the international, New International Version, Cardinal Martini. Cardinal Martini.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that gentleman. So that's right. So as long as we've departed from that, we are going to be Romanized. But they won't call it that. We'll call it liberalism or whatever. It's all Romanism.
Yeah, Joel Weeben likes to talk about. Yeah.
What's that?
Joel Weeben likes to talk about Christendom 2.0.
What's that?
The Christendom 2.0. It's this idea that they will establish a new political order of Christianity, and they will make sure that all the different judges and congressmen and politicians are all this kind of new order of Christian man, and they will create a new political power in the world. Will be
that's going back to the Holy Roman Empire. Remember, the New World Order is the Old World Order restored. It's the feudalism, dark age of Old World Order when the Pope, it was the meridian of papal power during the Dark Ages, and there was no dissent politically. You better do what you're told, boy, or we'll carry you off to the Inquisition. So that's what they really want to restore. No freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom of press, or any restoration of the nation of Israel. And this guy is such a bold-faced liar, not reading the scripture for what it says, denying what Jesus Christ had to say. He said, the day is coming when Abraham and Isaac and Jacob will sit down in this earthly kingdom of heaven, and the children will be brought out, will be cast out, namely that generation. But Christ talked about his physical second coming to establish the Davidic kingdom. That's what he said. Art thou then a king? Indeed, to this end was I born. John 18, he said he was the king and an earthly king. But if this kingdom was to be established on earth, then my servants would fight. No, the kingdom that I'm going to establish on earth, I will impose myself when I return the second time without sin unto salvation. That's the kingdom that he will establish on earth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you can see that this massive conflict is building in the world. It's going to be absolutely earth-shattering. It's going to be monolithic as we build up to this point in time where Christ is ultimately going to fight for his people. They are going to, this massive deception that's on them is going to break away. And even though some of the branches of this spiritual tree were broken off to allow us Protestants and Gentiles to be grafted in, that those natural branches are going to be grafted back in ultimately.
That's right.
And all these unnatural branches, these wild branches like us, like the Gentiles who are grafted in, they can be grafted right back out. It's just that clear.
That's why the apostle said, boast not against the branches, boast not against the root, because God is able to cut you out and regraft them back in. Romans 11. That's exactly what he's doing. He's not talking about Christians, Bible believers losing their salvation. He's talking about their nations being grafted out and the nation of Israel being grafted in.
Yeah, I can see that coming into view here. And I can see that the people of Israel are going to go through all these traumatic periods, just like October 7th. I think that those kind of events are going to continue. And in my view, the established nation, in 1948 wasn't put into place by the power elite and by the massive papal nobility and the, what would you call them, the Rothschild elites. They weren't putting this into place for their benefit, but for their planned destruction. And so that's why you can see that what they have planned for evil, God has meant for good, and he's going to use this. Yeah.
Genesis 50:20, that's exactly right. Which he meant it for evil, God weaved it for good to save many souls alive. So the devil, in reestablishing the revived Latin kingdom of Jerusalem, was the Lord reestablishing his nation of Israel. The revived Latin kingdom of Jerusalem is the mystery of iniquity. The restoration of the nation of Israel is the mystery of godliness. Exactly. So parallel with two separate purposes. That's right.
So it's coming to this brink of catharsis where we're going to have this conflict. It's happening quite quickly. I think that in many centuries past, Bible believers and Christians wanted to see these days, and we're in them, it's kind of makes your hair stand up a little bit, because we're in this situation that we are confronted with, and the biblical prophecies are coming alive, and we're facing what the enemy has determined. And you can see that these inquisitional and the destruction of accused heretics that has gone on for so many centuries is exactly the campaign of religious murder that is going to be brought back into being. I think a lot of people are deceived by this kind of Jesuit futurism, where they're looking forward to some mystery man to pop out as the Antichrist. They can't identify. Nobody knows who the Antichrist is, but all the signs are there, and we can see that it's the papacy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's Jesuit futurism. Biblical futurism is the final Pope of Rome will be that Antichrist for the 3.5 years. That's right.
Yeah, the papal seat and the papal authority has been curated through all these centuries for this purpose of establishing the final Antichrist. And I think he might be alive now. I mean, in many ways, they might know who they're going to use. And so it's a very. I think he's an individual who will unite all the people. It'll unite apostate Protestantism. It'll unite the Catholics. It'll unite the Muslims. It'll unite the apostate Jews. There are many messianic Christian Jews out there who believe in the Brit Hadashah and the scriptures, but there's a lot of Jews who are totally deceived. They're looking at the Old Testament. They're looking towards the old temple system of lamb sacrifice to somehow be restored so that they can please God again in their religious sentiment.
Well, they're looking for a political leader that they call the Messiah, but is not the Messiah, because they deny that their Messiah is Jehovah.
Yeah, they wouldn't need to build a new temple. Yeah.
That's right. It's clear that the Messiah is indeed Jehovah, according to many passages, like Isaiah 9, 6, and 7, and so on. But their Messiah of apostate Judaism is not God manifest in the flesh. And so it's a pagan religion, as pagan as Islam, as pagan as Romanism, and it is all of its Antichrist. And they will most assuredly weep when they realize that the one that's going to deliver them at the end of the 3.5-year Great Tribulation is this Jesus of Nazareth, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. I remember when I was in Israel many years ago, I was talking to an American missionary there, and he said, I was talking to a rabbi. And he said, Rabbi, what if, are you looking for Messiah to come, Rabbi? And he said, well, yes, I am. Yes, we are, my son. And he said, what if he turns out to be the lowly Nazarene? And the rabbi got real quiet, and he said, then we will be greatly ashamed, my son. And that's exactly what will happen according to Zechariah 12, verse 10. And they shall weep when they look upon me, because Jehovah's talking there, when they look upon me whom they have pierced.
Yeah, it's got to be absolutely heartbreaking if you think about it. It's got to be so difficult to face it. There's so many reasons why you would want to just turn away from it, or and there's a system of spiritual blindness that's in place, and of course the entire world and the entire system of Satan is there to keep this delusion and this deception in place. But I think, like you said, I think that Moses and Elijah are going to come. They're going to be the forerunners before this age of Jesus Christ. They're going to preach in the streets in Israel and Jerusalem, and they're going to show the people of Jerusalem the truth. And they are going to, and if it wasn't for their preaching, I don't think that anyone could convince them or break through that wall of blindness that's there.
Malachi said, I will send Elijah, lest I smite the earth with a curse. So the great important ministry of Elijah and Moses to turn the heart of the nation towards the Lord, which will happen especially when the final pope is murdered and comes back as the Antichrist. Because I believe they're going to blame the Jews for the killing of the final pope of Rome. If you look at the Masonic mystery religion of Hiram Abiff, Hiram Abiff is killed by 3 ruffians, and all 3 ruffians have a name that begins with J, Jubilo, Joe, whatever it is.
Jabalom,
Yeah, they're gonna blame the Jews for the killing of the final Pope of Rome to then rise from the dead and be born again in the Masonic Lodge to be Antichrist. And that will unite the world completely and totally against the Jews and Israel, because after all, it's this final Pope of Rome that brought us a temporary world peace. And these dirty Jews gotta kill him? Why, we're going to kill every last one of them. That'll be the big incident that will incite that, the catalyst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see that the three ruffians are definitely Jews, because the whole issue is over getting the secret word from Hiram Abiff regarding the rebuilding of the Hebrew temple, and of course he wouldn't give the secret word, and so they killed him.
And the word is Mahabon.
Yeah. According to them. Yeah.
Well, that's what it's in the Masonic rites. Yeah.
Well, I think that what it was reestablished there, I think after especially the Illuminati agents they started building their grand lodges, and they started reordering and rewriting the degrees of Freemasonry to become 33 degrees of Scottish Rite and York Rite. I think what they were introducing there was a reestablishment of the ancient Babylonian mystery religion, which is something only the Jesuits would really know in their intense knowledge.
That's right, and I have a couple books. One of them shows that the Jesuits wrote all the rites of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, every last one of them, including the 33rd degree, and then it goes on to the Rite of Mizraim and Memphis, all of them written by Jesuits.
Yeah. Yeah, for the purpose of what we're looking at now, the reestablishment of unlimited papal empire and universal papal supremacy throughout the world, is the system of the Antichrist.
That's right. I maintain the Jesuits will be the most powerful army in the world at the time the final Pope signs the seven, the Concordat, as you said. Well, all these nations, it's a covenant, it's a Concordat.
Yeah.
And the Jesuits will be the ones enforcing it. The Jesuits will be the ones who are going to try to kill Moses and Elijah when fire proceeds out of their mouth to kill any assassin that would want to kill them. This is all Jesuitism, bringing the Antichrist to power in the middle of the 70th week.
Yeah, I think that the Jesuits wouldn't be doing their job right if they weren't deeply infiltrated into all the different militaries of the world and even running them.
Yep.
And they would have plenty of time to do that.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, it's been an hour again. That goes by quick when we get you on the phone and we started talking to you, Pastor Phelps. So that was wonderful. I thank you again. And we continue to pray for you. And we want to support your ministry and your work over there. Where can the listener reach you and find your website and your podcast?
You can go to 247worldradio.com. My podcast posted up there. You can access them and listen to them for free, the ones that I have posted. I also have Stephen Drake on that I've had every other week, and we're doing the Jesuit World Order series. I think they'll like that. And then I have 24/7 VaticanAssassins.org, where you can pick up my ebook and a few other things. So, and you can contact me at rbpbchurch@comcast.net. You can send a gift to Eric, Eric John Jon Phelps, PHELPS, for a Cash App, if you want to send that, or you can send a check to RBT at P.O. Box 306, Newmanstown, Pennsylvania 17073, or you can send something to Cash App or to PayPal at rbpbdonate@comcast.net. So any donation is appreciated. Of course, I appreciate your prayers most of all.
Absolutely, and we continue to thank you for your time, and we'll hope to talk to you again soon for another update, and you have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's right, guys. It's another awesome commercial break here. We have to just remind you of our wonderful sponsor, wendyslimited.com. wendyslimited.com has all the best supply, the best catalog of all the incredible boutique couture, right? This beautiful women's apparel and shoes and jewelry, just an awesome selection. Wendy's catalog selection of the most incredible fine women's wear. And of course, we have a really incredible selection of bathing suits and beachwear that are coming online right now for the summer season. So I hope you guys will go check out our awesome sponsor. And we have been noticing that we're getting incredible reception, and we're really getting the message out. We're getting the word out that Wendy's Boutique Couture, right? This is boutique supremacy, and this is really an incredible outlet for women to find the newest and latest trends in women's designer fashion wear. So we hope you will go check out wendyslimited.com. We need your support, and I hope you will do everything you can to go there, try out Wendy's awesome catalog, limited catalog selection, and see what she has to offer there at wendyslimited.com, guys. wendyslimited.com, hottest new styles.
Lost in the gloom, all alone. Every sound a hopeful sign, every breath a whispered plea. Is this fate or just bad timing? What will become